One of the challenges of growing up in my family was the strident belief that we all had to believe the same thing. Does anybody else come from a family like that? Okay, a few folks. In my family, it was our country, right or wrong. Religion took a backseat to patriotism. Veterans Day was one of the most honored holidays in our family. During the years when I lived with a great aunt and uncle, I would watch my aunt create a large wreath that would be laid at the statue of the unknown soldier in Memphis. It was a very sacred and solemn ritual. She also worked tirelessly to help wives and children, often widows and children, of veterans. So you can imagine when the Vietnam War came along and I began to question whether we should be involved in that war, she was not happy. I would tell her that I loved my country enough to question whether it should be involved in the Vietnam War. I was opposed in particular because early in the war, I can't remember if I was in middle school or early high school, that war became personal when the son of our bus driver, a much beloved young man, was killed. I watched Grady's mother suffer. It was one of my first experiences of death of someone in my community. And being from a small town, the whole community grieved. Later, I helped friends struggle with opposing the draft, enlisting, or going to Canada. I believed, and still do, that a citizen should have the right to question the actions of our government. I learned from both my great aunt and my friends that citizenship was something precious and not to be taken for granted. Later, I was involved with many people who put their lives on the line as they participated in civil rights work in Mississippi. I have had friends from countries that were overtaken by military dictatorships. One friend was thankfully on sabbatical when her country was overtaken by the military, so she survived. A woman invited to participate in an interfaith speaking tour who spoke out against the military government in her country died in an accident shortly after returning home. Many of us could probably share the stories of people we have known. Each of those stories reminds us of how, despite the imperfections of our system of government, we are blessed to be living here. Let us be filled with gratitude. And yet, let us also be filled with indignation for the suffering that has surrounded this presidential election. Many in our country have felt that they have been given permission to act on their prejudices because of the hate speech, the misinformation, the fear-mongering that has been part of this current presidential campaign. In the midst of this, many people of color have been harassed, bullied, and killed. In a sad way, these horrific acts have pulled back the covers on behaviors and attacks that have already been a reality for people of color and those whose voices are not often heard. While racism and classism and prejudice have always been present in this and any nation, we need to stand up against the rise of acts of hate and fear. We need to be those who speak and act to bring an end to this prejudice and violence. To be a Unitarian Universalist in this nation at this time means that we need to be role models for what it means to be a citizen. We need to call people back to civil discourse and to provide leadership within our congregation and the larger community. No matter who wins the presidential election, we need to work together on varied projects to build up our communities rather than to tear them down. So let's sit and listen to one another, realizing that none of us has all the answers and each of us needs a voice. During the last years on our national political scene, as bipartisan decision-making has been blocked over and over again, I've asked myself, where are the statesmen who can build coalitions to accomplish the complex and essential work of building a nation that supports the good of all her citizens and our natural resources and our world, the natural world. I mean, there's so many things that we need to work together on. Let us be the bridge builders and the statesmen. Let us support those who build the bridges of statesmanship on a national and a local and a personal level. Perhaps part of the challenge for us in this time is that we have chosen a way of life that too often separates us from one another. We stay in our offices, cars, and homes, which keep us from knowing our neighbors and our community. This means that we no longer see the needs or the suffering of those around us. This makes our nation building more challenging. Those without a voice or power are often ignored. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to hear the voices of those who are not being heard. The Black Lives Matter movement and the demonstrations at Standing Rock are two examples in which Unitarian Universalists across the country are involved in helping create a nation that includes all her citizens. We support those who are suffering and those who need advocates to stand beside them, including, and I think this is one of the things that's been very sort of held up into the light in this campaign, including those in towns where businesses and factories have left, in rural areas, and in our inner cities. Their communities are broken. These people need their anger to be heard. We Unitarian Universalists are called to support the democratic process within our nation, for we recognize that there are many who are suffering. We need to listen. Our commitment to the democratic process means supporting those whose beliefs and needs are different from our own. This has become more and more difficult in the last few years as individual rights have held sway over much of our society. The focus on individual rights, or I can say whatever I want to or do whatever I want to without any boundaries, can be clearly seen in our Unitarian Universalist history, particularly in the fellowship movement of which we are a part. Individual beliefs have often been prized over community health and well-being. Just as there has been a challenge for our individual congregations, so it can be seen on a national level. As Connie Goodbread, our UUA conflict consultant, reminded us, our nation was founded on deist or Unitarian values. Therefore, when there is unrest in the nation, it is felt more keenly in our congregations. Our commitment to diversity in our nation begins with an openness to diversity of political beliefs within our congregation. Because we support that, we have a policy that states we will honor the varied political beliefs of those within our congregation. We don't often talk about that there are many Unitarian Universalists who are religious liberals and political conservatives. We don't talk about that, but we are called to make sure that people of all beliefs and stations in life have a voice and a place. We are called to remind one another that within the bounds of civility and affirmation of the common good, we are here together. So whatever the outcome of the political election, and some of y'all know I have strong opinions personally, we are called to work together to build a stronger, more inclusive nation. So I invite us all, for the next few days, it's important to pray. This is the only thing in the sermon that's similar to other traditional services going on right now across the. It's important to pray, to meditate, to sing and chant and send positive thoughts to all those who serve us in political office, to those who have the strength and the courage to run for office and to serve. This is a momentous election. And while campaigns have sadly not brought out the best in our civil discourse, it is my fervent hope that we can begin to heal the chasms that have opened between people of different political beliefs. Let us be those who listen, who speak with civil tongues, who speak for those who have no voice, and who can help coalitions of people of goodwill. In this way, we can move forward together as a people and a nation. In that spirit, I invite us to join our hearts and minds in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of wisdom, as we prepare to elect new citizens to lead us in our communities, town and cities, in our counties, states, in our heart-torn nation, grant us wisdom and discernment so that we may choose those of peaceful heart, of competent mind, and of servant spirit. Spirit of the harvest, help us to winnow the grain from the chaff and to reap the legacy of freedom our founders planted for all of us. Help us to gather together as one people, united in concern for this country founded upon such promising ideals. Spirit of healing, grant that we may bridge the breaches that have opened between us. Help us to understand one another, to listen to the stories of who we are, and to find common ground on which we can move forward together. Amen. May we be guided by our highest principles in all that we do,